Hey guys, welcome to my video on functions. In this video is going to be another problem video, guys. And once again, I'm just going to focus on solving the problem and not go too far into the theory. Okay, so let's get going. Express the edge length of a cube as a function of its diagonal length d. Then express the surface area and volume of the cube as a function of d. Okay, so what does this mean? Okay, so we have a cube here. Okay, we have a cube here, and this is an edge. Okay, and we want to express this edge as a function of the cube's diagonal. Okay, what's the cube's diagonal? The cube's diagonal is actually this line. It's a line from this point all the way to this point. Okay, so from this point to this point, that's the cube's diagonal. So we want to express this edge as a function of this diagonal. Okay, and once we find this edge, we want to also express the surface area and volume of the cube as a function of d, which is kind of easy after we find the edge, right? So let's now start by writing down all the formulas that we're going to need. Okay, so we need to first express the edge as a function of d. Okay, and then we need to find the surface area. The surface area is basically the area of the base times 6, because there's 6 sides to the cube. Okay, so the area of the base is edge. Okay, let me just fix that. It's edge times edge, which is going to give me the area of the base, times the 6 sides. Okay, or we could write it like 6 times f of d, the edge. Okay, let me write that a little bit cleaner too. F of d squared, right? So this function d squared. Okay, and the volume is the base times the height. So it's basically edge times edge times edge. Okay, and that's basically f of d cubed. Okay, so these are the 3 formulas we need, guys. Okay, and let's also label our edge to be the variable x. Okay, just for simplicity, I don't feel like writing edge every time in the equation. So let's label edge to equal x. Okay, so now we could go back to our original problem. How are we going to find this diagonal? Okay, good question. You guys have an idea? Yes, you're right. The Pythagorean theorem. We're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. How are we going to use the Pythagorean theorem? We're going to find the diagonal of the base. Okay, we're going to start by finding the diagonal of the base of the cube. Okay, and once we find the length of the diagonal here, we're going to know the diagonal here plus the diagonal of the base plus the edge of the cube is going to help us find the diagonal of the cube. So the diagonal of the base plus the edge of the cube is going to help us find the diagonal of the cube. Okay, so how are we going to find the diagonal of the base? Well, this is the base right over here, and let me draw the diagonal. You guys have an idea of how we can find the diagonal of the base? Pythagorean theorem again, right? So we could use the Pythagorean theorem twice in order to find the diagonal of the cube. Okay, so let me write that down. So first we're going to find, I'll write it in blue. First we're going to find the diagonal of the square or the base. Let me write base. Diagonal of the base, which just happens to be a square, and we'll call that D. And then we're going to use D and find the diagonal of the volume. We'll call it D, capital D. Okay? Okay, so now we're ready to start solving our equation. Okay, so let me just make some space. So, okay, so what's the first thing? We know that the edge length is x because we just defined it, right? We just defined the edge length to be x. So do the d, little d, is just x squared plus x squared is equal to d squared. Okay, so this solves to 2x squared is equal to d squared. And this solves to square root of 2 times x is equal to d, right? Because I just square rooted both sides. Okay, so now we have the length of the diagonal d. So we know d is equal to 2x over d. So now let's find the diagonal of the cube. So to find the diagonal of the cube, it's going to be, as we said, root 2x, the diagonal of the base, squared, plus the edge squared, which is just x squared, is going to equal that diagonal squared, right? So let's solve for this. So this is going to be 2x squared plus x squared is equal to d squared. Okay, so then this solves to 3x squared is equal to d squared, which then solves to, let me make a little bit more space. So we square root both sides. So we have square root of 3 times x is equal to d. Okay, but we want to express the diagonal as a function of the edge, which is x, right? So we know x is equal to d divided by root 3. So there we go, guys. We solved the first part of a problem. We expressed the edge as a function of the diagonal. Okay, so we solved the first part of the problem. Let me just box that and write it out. Okay, so we found edge as a function of diagonal. Okay, so let me just Edge is a function of diagonal. Okay, so we solved that. Now we could just refer to the formulas we wrote over here to solve the rest of the problem. So we know that the next is the surface area, right? So how do we find the surface area? Well, the surface area is just the edge squared times 6. So let's get our edge, which is our edge, okay? So let's do it. So surface area is just our edge. So our edge is d time over root 3 squared times 6, right? So what is this? This is just d squared, let me just write d squared d squared over 3 times 6, which just ends up being 2d squared. Okay, so that's our surface area. Okay, so that's it, guys. So we just plug it in and we get the answer. Okay, so that's it. Let me just box this guy up as well. Okay, so we solved the surface area, we solved the edge of the, we found the equation of the edge, and the surface area is basically edge times edge times edge. So for this question, guys, I'm just going to leave it to you. It's pretty straightforward. You just follow the pattern that we have. I'm going to let you, if you have the answer, please put it down in the comment below, and you could compare with other people if you got it right. So that's it, guys. So this is basically how you approach a problem like this. At first, it might seem a little bit overwhelming because you can't really see the connection between the diagonal and the edge, but just take it down, to break it down part by part, write down what you know, draw a picture, and it's slowly, you slowly figure it out. Okay, so once again, guys, thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. And I'll be coming back to you guys with another video. So the next couple of lectures are going to be a little bit more theoretical. I still need to figure out how to do it, but yeah, so it's going to be a little bit more theory. And yeah, so see you next time, guys. Thank you. Bye.